I'm Gene Holter. Welcome to Mel Bay's Anyone Can Play the Drum Set video. The basic purpose for this video is to give you a good understanding of how time and counting works, because that's what we as drummers deal mostly with. The other purpose of this video is to give you a good understanding of how trap set playing is done and how to do it. The first thing I'd like to talk about today in the video is the snare drum. The snare drum is called that because it has metal wire snares across the bottom underneath it that make it sound like that instead of like a tom-tom. Just to mention a few things about the snare drum, I've seen some nightmare happenings go on when I walked into schools that I work with. I've seen fellows with their snare drums set up clear up here next to the tom-tom in a row like that, which is obviously a bad place for it. You have to do the splits because you have to set your hi-hat clear off to the left to make room for your snare drum on the top. It should be right down here between your legs, right next to the tom-tom, and as close to this tom-tom as you can get, to the floor tom. The angle is another thing that I've seen crucified from time to time. I've seen fellows with their snare drum tipped like that. And obviously you can't play it very well because when you hit it like that, you get this kind of sound with your stick. And if you tip it down where it's supposed to be, you get a much bigger, fatter kind of a sound like that instead of this weak sound. Obviously the stick is meant to be played on the side of the bead, and it can't be if it's at that kind of an angle. The drum should be as flat as it can be so that you can play on it well, and possibly if your stool is lower, you'd want to be able to hit the head rather than the rim, so you'd have to lower the drum down depending on how you sit. I sit quite high, and there are several kinds of sounds you want to get out of the snare drum. One of them is just that kind of sound. The other one is what we call a rim shot, which is like that. It's a lot louder, and what's happening there is you're hitting the snare drum head and the rim at the same time. It gives you two different sounds. You can probably hear the snare drum difference between the snare drum and the rim shot sound. I've seen people also have their snare drum so low that they hit their leg instead of the drum. It's just not a good idea. It's not a good playing practice to have it too low or too high. The tom-toms up here, these two up here are called the mounted tom-toms. These are deep drums. They're rock drums, I guess you might call them. They're called power toms sometimes, but they're deep. And it causes them to sit up high off the top of the bass drum. What you generally see that might become a problem for a drummer is that the tom-tom will sit up like 6-8 inches higher than the snare drum. Consequently, when you're trying to play from the snare drum to the tom-tom, that kind of thing, you end up hitting on the edge of the drum if it's set up too high. So you want to have your tom-toms down low, as close to the snare drum as you can handily get them, and still have the setup the way you want it. So you can get from here to there without having a problem getting caught on the edge. As far as these two tom-toms go here and where they're set, I suggest that they be as close together as you can get them, so you can once again, for speed, get from here to there as quickly as possible without this one being clear over here and you having to reach farther than is necessary. You can see that I've got them about a stick's width apart here, and the closer that I can get them, the happier I'll be. Of course, if you put them right together, they're going to rattle, so you don't want to do that. Same thing with the floor tom down here. They call this the floor tom. I have it underneath, actually, the edge of this mounted tom-tom, and I have it as close to the snare drum as I can get without putting the cramp in the style of my bass drum leg here. I like to have this thing set as closely over that way as possible, and the reason for that is so I can get from one drum to the other once again as fast as possible. That kind of thing. So I can play all four drums very quickly without having to get caught, hung up, and reach and all that kind of thing. The ride cymbal over here is called a ride cymbal because obviously you're going to be playing the rhythm pattern of the particular style of song that you play. So you're riding over here on the cymbal. You're just riding that cymbal. That's why they call it the ride cymbal. Ride cymbal, when you ride it, generally sounds like that. It could be a swing beat or a rock and roll beat or whatever. This is a 20-inch ride cymbal. It's the one that I like the best. An 18 is just a little too small and loud for me. A 22 builds up more than I like. In other words, build up is this kind of gong sound in the background underneath the stick sound. This particular one is a ping ride, has a big bell, so it makes a big loud sound when I go to play a rock beat and want a good big bell sound. It's kind of loud and obnoxious actually, but there are times when you want that. There are several kinds of bells, cups up here on the ride cymbals. The other kind that I own is called a mini cup or a mini bell ride. It's got a little teeny bell here. It's a lot softer cymbal because of that. It isn't as loud. It makes a great jazz cymbal. And the build-up isn't near as much. There isn't near as much gong sound because of the size of that bell. The other cymbal that we have over here is called a crash cymbal. This one is just a little 14-inch cymbal. It's a small cymbal. It's one of three that I have. The reason I have this one here today is because it starts quick and it stops quick. Once you hit it, it doesn't ring on and on and on forever like an 18-inch one. You hit an 18-inch one, it's crash and ring, 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 and so on. There are many, many different kinds of cymbals, and of course each kind of cymbal has its place. They all have a different purpose, they all have different sounds and that kind of thing. From one cymbal to another, you'll get a different kind of sound. If you want to investigate different kinds of cymbals, I suggest you go to a music dealer and ask for a description of different kinds and look at some different kinds. Another thing I wanted to talk about before I go any further is a little bit about tuning in the drums. You might have noticed up here that I have a couple of pads taped on these tom-toms, and that's just to take some of the ring out. I have nothing taped to the bottom heads at all. The thing that carries the sound of a drum is the ring. The resonance of the drum carries the sound away, and if they ring too much when you're recording, they sound bad. So obviously you do something to take some of the ring out. On these drums down here, I have a ring down here that's made out of the same material as a drum head, and it takes some of the ring out of that head. Here's another one over here, just by way of demonstration. Now over here we have the hi-hat cymbal. The hi-hat cymbal is operated by your foot, although you play on it with your hands also. You can do some really interesting things with a hi-hat cymbal. You don't have to just sit and operate it with your foot up and down, up and down. You can play on it in a variety of ways. It's operated by your left foot down there and a rod going up through that stand. They call that the hi-hat cymbal, and we'll do some things with that later. Now going down to my feet. Here's the left foot on the hi-hat, and I'm a right-handed drummer, so that's why my left foot is over there. A lot of guys think that you should only play drums right-handed, and I've seen drummers come through town with big bands that are left-handed people playing right-handed drums, and they do some really interesting things. They have a ride cymbal over here and a ride cymbal over here, and become almost ambidextrous on the drum set. The other foot, my right foot, is on the bass drum. Of course, the biggest drum that we have here is the bass drum. It's not all for show. Lays down the beat, lays down the bottom sound of the trap set, of the drum set. So that's a bass drum with my right foot, operated with a pedal once again. On your stool, going down to the bottom, I'm sitting on just a little round stool with a nice big cushion on the bottom. If you sit too low, if your stool is way too low, you're going to be reaching up all the time to play, and it's harder to reach. On the other hand, if you sit too high, your legs aren't comfortable, and the stool cuts right over here. The stool cuts into the back of your leg. I'm sitting a little high today on account of the TV thing. I normally would be just a little bit lower, so my leg would be up here and be level, so the stool isn't cutting into my leg. It's not a good idea to have a vinyl stool. I normally sit on a cloth to keep from getting all sweaty. My stool has a back on it back here, and if you sit around and play, I've been playing since I was 14, I'm 44 now, so if you don't sit straight, if you don't sit up well in front of your set when you're playing, lean ahead just a little bit, keep your back very straight. If you don't sit like that, you're going to get a terrible backache, and that's what I did. It got so I couldn't almost play at all. So I put a back on my stool, and I lean on it almost all the time. It really saves me a lot of grief and a lot of pain. I've seen fellas on TV who play what I call sky cymbals. In other words, they have this crash cymbal clear up here, and their ride cymbal clear up here. And I'm not saying that they don't do a good job, because a lot of them do, but for all practical purposes, it's much easier to reach your cymbal if it's down lower. Same thing with the hi-hat over here. It's just much easier if they're down level. I try to keep my ride cymbal over here so that my arm can be level and just be as natural as possible. I just can, it's just real easy for me. After I play 3 or 4 sets, at the end of 4 hours, if I had to play up here all the time, my arm would be really tired. And so I suggest that you keep your cymbals down where you can reach them easily. This one is a little higher, and the reason for that is I have to switch back and forth from tom-toms to hi-hat, and I don't want to hit it by accident. When I first saw my snare drum, it was about 1958, can you believe that? My band director taught me to hold my sticks like this. And the reason for that was, when we went outside and marched, I carried a snare drum on just a strap that went around my front and my back here, and it was hooked on to this part of this lug of the drum, and it hung crooked like this. And I couldn't play with a match grip because I'd have to sit like this. I'd have to have one hand clear up in the air. So I held my sticks this way in what is now called the traditional grip. And I learned how to play that way. I learned how to do all my rudiments and all my rolling and so on with this kind of a traditional grip. Your stick goes between your thumb and your hand here, between your 2 middle fingers, kind of bounces off of that finger right here. Most of the holding is done here, and then this finger over here is a buffer to keep it from getting away, to help you keep control. There's nothing wrong with this grip. It's a good grip. I still use it. Matter of fact, I use it in jazz. Whenever I play jazz, I really like it because it just lends itself to a real good bounce and a real good technique. The other kind of grip is called a matched grip, where you hold both sticks exactly the same. And it's a great grip too. As a matter of fact, I think it, in going around, especially in rock and roll, I think it's faster. I'm able to go faster. You hold both sticks exactly the same. If you look at this hand here, that stick is held between these first 2 fingers, the finger and the thumb here, and it's kind of like a teeter-totter, rocks back and forth. My fingers go over the top. I don't grab it tight like that, but my fingers go over the top and allow that stick to bounce back and forth. It bounces against the soft part of my hand right in here so that I don't hurt my hands after playing for a long, long time. But that's called a match grip. Both hands hold them exactly the same. There are just another aspect of grip here is, like, my hands are dry, and I have a lot of trouble holding on to my sticks. And when I play and get really active, sometimes one of them will slip out of my hand. And what I use then, if I have trouble, is I have drum gloves. And they're really soft leather gloves, very similar to a baseball glove or a golf glove, made out of leather with a cloth back, so they're nice and cool. And my hands don't have to squeeze and grip as hard when I'm holding those gloves because my sticks don't slip out of them as easily. And I can play longer without getting tired if I have a pair of drum gloves on. When you play match grip, by the way, your drum is flat. Your drum is just flat. It's not tilted to the right or tilted to the left or to the front or to the back. You just play it flat, and it works really well that way. A really important area to talk about right now is something we just can't leave out, is the kind of sticks you use and how many kinds of sticks there are. In showing these sticks, these are kind of unusual, and they're really new, but I really like them. I use them all the time. They have a swell here up in the butt of the stick. This is the butt up here, and there's a little swell there that you can see. Really helps me to hold on to my sticks, keeps them from slipping out of my hands. Once again, I have that problem because I have dry skin. Up here is the shoulder of the stick, right in here, and this up here is the bead. This particular set of sticks has the bead sawn off here, and it gives you a different tone quality on the cymbals. This set of sticks is square. The purpose, I guess, is not rolling in your hand. They're just a different kind of a sound. They have a wooden bead up here, just a regular wooden bead. It's kind of a long bead. This is a more normal kind of a pair of sticks. These are the ones I've been using. They have a regular bead, but it's a nylon bead up here. Nylon bead doesn't shatter and sliver up as fast when you're playing on cymbals a lot, so they're good set sticks. wooden beads, if you play on cymbals a lot, will sometimes shatter and get real slivery. This is a different size stick here. This is a real thin little stick. It's called a silhouette stick. It's a nylon tip stick once again. I use it to play really quiet gigs. If I get a sit-in job with a jazz band that plays really quiet dinner music, I use a little bitty stick like this. Of course, there are just oodles of sizes here. There are 2B sticks, and there are 5A sticks and 5B sticks, and the numbers go on and on. Originally, I'm told that the B in 2B or 5B or whatever stood for band, and the A in 7A and 5A and so on stood for orchestra. A 5A stick is an average size. 5A and 5B, they're kind of an average size stick. They're not a great big humongous stick, and they're not a little skinny kind of a stick for playing jazz. 2B, for instance, it's a big heavy stick. A lot of guys use it for rock and roll. Drummers deal with counting and time. How they keep time, how many counts they play to a measure, whether they speed up or slow down. All is time, and that's the most important thing that they do. It's what we deal with all the time. I want to talk about counting to you and time with you and what kind of notes get what counts and that kind of thing. Time signatures are written at the beginning of a staff. The staff is what originally was invented, so to speak, to write notes on. It's 5 lines that go across the page like this. That staff is divided up into sections by vertical lines going up and down like this. The distance from the beginning of the staff to the first vertical line, and from that vertical line to the next one, and that one to the next one, is called a measure. Now, in each one of these measures, we have a certain number of counts. The time signature at the beginning, which is the fraction-like looking thing, 4/4, tells you how many counts there are in each one of those measures. Now, if you go back with me to the first guy that was writing music, we'll say he chose to use up a whole measure in 4/4 time, which is the most common time. He chose to write a symbol in that measure which was just a circle. It took up the whole measure, and in 4/4 time it got 4 counts, because there are only 4 counts in the measure. That whole note is just a circle. And in drumming, the whole note gets just one sound, like that. But there are 4 counts in the measure, so I'm going to play the notes for you on the snare drum, and I'm going to play the counts in the measure down here on the bass drum. So we'll have some kind of reference point as to how fast we're going and what kind of counting we're doing. Okay, we're doing 4/4 time. Here's what a whole note sounds like. You just hit it and count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what a whole note sounds like. If you look on the graph, there are 2 of them there. Each one gets 4 counts. The next little thing you see there is the little square thing written underneath the line is called a whole rest. And it gets the same amount of time that the whole note gets. In other words, when you play a rest, you don't play. You rest. And you count 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, once again, I'm not playing notes on the bass drum. I'm just using it to keep time. The next kind of note they got by dividing the half note up, because if you played all whole notes, you'd get bored fast. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we go down to half notes. Half notes get, obviously, half a measure, okay? Half of the measure is worth half of the counts, 2 counts. So you have 2 notes in each measure, each one getting 2 counts. Now we can't have them looking like circles like whole notes do. We have to make them look different. So what they did was put a stem on them, and you can see the stem on the chart there, going up and down vertically, attached to the circle. They sound like this, 2 counts each. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the next thing you see there is another rest. That particular rest you see is sitting on top of the line, and there's another one there with it. Those are half rests. The difference between those and whole rests is that they are sitting on a line. Whole rests are hanging underneath the line. If you look at the last measure, there's a half rest and a half note. It goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. See how that works? A half note. The next thing that we do, because we get really sick of playing only whole notes and half notes, is divide down again. So counting is just a matter of division here. We divide those half notes in half, and we come up with 4 notes that get 1 count apiece. And we call them quarter notes because they get a quarter of the measure, just like a quarter would get 1/4 of a dollar. Okay? So there are 4 quarter notes in this next chart here, and you play them 1 count apiece. In the second measure there, you see 4 squiggly looking lines in the staff. Those are quarter rests, and they get 1 count just like the quarter notes do. If I were to play this whole line for you, it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rest. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rest. 2, 3, 4. So we've got 3 notes, 3 kinds of notes so far, each one getting a different kind of count. The quarter note has to look different once again than the half note. So what we did was black it in. You can see that it's black solid all the way through. Now the next thing we get by dividing down, again, is called an eighth note. And if you look at this chart, number 4 here, the eighth note looks very similar to the quarter note, except that up on the top of the stem they've drawn a little flag or a little line across between the notes. There are 2 different ways to write eighth notes. If you look in the third measure of your chart here, you see the notes with the little flag hanging down. That's an eighth note also. Eighth notes are played 2 to a count. So actually down here we've got the beat going on the bass drum, going 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have to play 2 eighth notes to every one of those taps of my foot. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You heard me saying and for each one between each number. Well, we've got 8 notes here. We've got 8 of them in the measure, and we don't have enough numbers. There are only 4 counts in the measure, so I can't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we had to label the note that we got by dividing down. The one in between each note, we had to label it with something else. And something easy to say is and. So we just say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now if you look in the third measure of the chart, where we have the 2 notes hanging down with the flags hanging down, those 2 are first ones are eighth notes, and we count them 1 and. The next note is a quarter note. It gets a whole count. So that's 2. And then we have 2 more eighth notes, 3 and then we have the next one is a quarter note, 4. In the last measure, they're written with the bar across the top of the stems, so you know that they're eighth notes, and that measure counts out 1 and, 2, 3, 4 and. We have 2 eighth notes, 2 quarter notes, and 2 more eighth notes. Okay? The thing to remember about eighth notes, since there are 2 of them to a count, when you go to counting them 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and, in relation to the beat, now thinking of my bass drum foot down here, in relation to the beat, one of them is played when my foot goes down on the beat, and the next one is played after my foot hit the beat. So it's called an afterbeat or an upbeat. When my foot comes up in the air, you hit the and note, the after note. It goes like this, if you can see. 1 and 2 and down, up, down, up, down, up, 2 and 3 and 4 and. Eighth notes. There are eighth rests also. If you look down in the next measure down there, we have a quarter rest first. We have 2 eighth notes and a quarter rest. That's 1 and 2. And we have a quarter note, which is 3. And then we have an eighth rest. It looks like a little number 7 with a bump on the front of it. That's an eighth rest, and it gets a half a count just like an eighth note does. So when you play that measure, you'd be going 1 and 2, 3, rest and, 4 and. Would sound like this. 1 and 2, 3, 4 and. And the next measure has eighth note, eighth rest, eighth note, eighth rest. Sounds 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. In drumming, actually, it sounds like quarter notes. Now I want to give you a demonstration of how that very simple rock beat goes. This is like a 50s rock beat. It's the easiest one that there is to learn. Okay, here's how it goes. If you look at the chart, underneath the staff, underneath the 5 lines, clear down on the bottom, there's a little X next to the second note and next to the fourth note. That's the hi-hat symbol mark. And if you count through those notes, 1, 2, that's where the hi-hat is on count 2, and then 3, 4 on count 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. On the bottom space, there are 4 quarter notes. That's the bass drum space. The bass drum is 4 quarter notes, goes on all 4 counts, just 1, 2, 3, 4. On the third space up, if you count 3 spaces up from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, there are 2 quarter notes there, and they're on count 2 and 4. So you count 1, 2, 3, 4. So here we are with a hi-hat going 1, 2, 3, 4. Bass drum going 1, 2, 3, 4. Snare drum on 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Up on the top, clear above the staff, there are 8 X's written out as eighth notes. They have the line across the top of the stems. They have the stem on them, so they're written out as eighth notes. Those are the ride cymbal marks over on your right hand. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Here's what that beat looks like on the drum set with pictures of my feet and hands going. The bass drum, once again, is going on the basic 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. The hard part of this beat is going to be getting your right hand to go on the ride cymbal on the down, up, 1 and 2 and. Here's what it looks like. Watch my right foot on the bass drum, my right hand on the cymbal. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Now if you go back and look at the chart, you would see my left foot and my left foot and my left hand going on 2 and 4 while this right hand business is going on that I just showed you. I'll do the whole thing. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Some people have trouble doing it in that particular order. So if you'd like, you can try doing, say, your left hand and your hi-hat first. So you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then add the bass drum. 2, 3, 4. Then after you get real good at doing this, then add ride cymbal. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, if you can't get it that way, you might try the ride cymbal first, then add the bass drum. If you can't do it that way, you might try just your hands first. You can try it any approach you want. The first sample that we want to play for you here is a really simple 50s rock and roll beat. It's absolutely the easiest 50s rock and roll beat that you can learn. I want to emphasize to you when you try this, you're not going to be able the first time to play it as fast as I play it. And of course, you're not going to become a drummer by just sitting there and watching me. You have to try to do everything that I do. I have to emphasize to you that you have to go very slowly in the beginning. I mean, I'm talking slow, really slow, and learn how to do it right, then speed up, and be sure you stay right as you get faster and faster. Once again, slow, practice, take your time, okay? Be patient. Here's that 50s rock and roll beat, just old 50s, 1 and 2 and ready. Here we go, 1, 2, ready. Now we're going to divide the eighth notes down that we had just got a few minutes ago. We're going to divide them into 16th notes. In other words, there were 8 notes in a measure, now there are 16 notes in a measure. We have to make these 16th notes look different than the 8th notes do, and if you look at your chart, you can see that at the top of the stem there are 2 bars or 2 flags drawn across the top of the notes. Now we have 2 notes that we got by dividing each 8th note down, and we have to have a label for each one of those notes. So take a look at the first 4 notes there. We had 1 and, now we've got 2 more notes, and we call them something easy to say fast. So we say 1 E and a, 1 E and a. You can say that really fast. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And these notes generally go fast when you play them in a beat. Now when you're playing your basic 1, 2, 3, 4 that you have in the measure, from the time signature, you play 4 of these 16th notes per beat. In other words, if you're looking at the chart, your bass drum would go down on 1, and then you play E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 4 notes to a beat. These 16th notes are used in fills in rock and roll a lot. A fill is a little short solo at the end of a phrase. In other words, if you have a phrase from a song like Mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll, then the drummer would play a little bitty solo at the end of that line. Each one of those sentences in music is called a phrase, and a little fill comes at the end of each one of those phrases, each one of those lines. This little fill here, a 16th note fill, would sound like this. We'd be doing the rock beat, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 E and a 4 E and a 1, 2. Now if you play all 16th notes, they get really boring sounding like they sound. They sound da 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 da, just like a machine gun. So if you take those 16th notes and put accents on them, they would sound different. An accent, if you see it on the chart, is a little V, sideways V, that's written underneath the note that they want you to play louder. In other words, every time you see one of these little V's under a note, you hit louder. I'll accent the first note of 4 here. Okay? Now, if you put accents in different places on 16th notes, instead of sounding all the same, it sounds like this. Sounds fancy, but it's really simple. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, with louder notes in it, makes it sound, makes it sound fancy. Not any harder than playing right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, just louder notes, okay? Another thing you can do to dress up 16th notes while you're playing them on fills is use different drums. In other words, if we play rock beat again, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we put the 16th notes around some of these different drums to make it sound fun and interesting. It gives us a chance to use the other drums too, right? So you're going like this, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1, 2. Sounds really fancy, but it's just a matter of hitting those 16th notes on different drums at different times. Okay? The other thing that I have to talk to you about is a 16th rest. It looks just like an 8th rest, only it has 2 little wings on the top that make it look like kind of a double 7. And if you did that, you would take out the 1, the E, the and, or the take your choice. Say, we'll take out the E. And instead of having 1 E and a, you'd have 1 and a. And that makes for a more interesting sound too. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. Okay? So much for 16th rests. The next thing I wanted to talk about is a different beat. Instead of 4 beats on the bass drum, I want to talk about a 2 beat on the bass drum. So instead of going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, you use your right foot and you play it only on 1 and 3. In other words, there are only 2 bass drum beats to a measure, and they call it a 2 beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Some people call this a fake beat because you're not playing all 4 beats down here, you're just playing 1 and 3. And if you were to play like a show tune, a really fast tune, you'd fake playing everything that you normally should play, and it would come out like this. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you'd play 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you notice I only played 8 quarter notes on the cymbal up here too. If you look at the chart, that it's chart number 9. If you look at this chart, it shows the bass drum on 1, and there's a quarter rest on 2, and then there are 2 8th notes, 3 and then there's another quarter rest on 4. So it goes 1, 2, 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Everything else stays the same. The old rock beat, remember? 1, 2, 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay? There's another possibility that we can use there, and that would be to put an 8th rest in place of the count number 2. So instead of going 1, 2, you'd be going 1, rest, and 3. Instead of going 1, 2, 3, you'd be going 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3. It's just another variation of a 2-beat. Everything else stays the same. Right hand, left foot, everything is the same except the bass drum. It sounds like this. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4. And I'm sure you recognize that from countless rock and roll songs that you've heard. Just, I can think of thousands of rock and roll songs that that beat is used on. Here's another variation quickly that's not written on the chart. Your first count and your third count are divided into eighth notes. So it's 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 2 is a rest, 4 is a rest on the bass drum. Your snare drum is the only other thing that plays, and I'm sure you recognize this when you hear it. Bass drum, 1 and, snare 2. Here we go. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Swing and jazz are really important beats, one that you use a lot. You even use them in rock bands. Oftentimes there'll be a shuffle, but swing and jazz music you play and hear all the time. That's what I want to talk about next. Swing is mostly done in 4/4 time, although it can be done in 3 and other signatures too, but for our purposes we're going to talk about it in 4/4 time. It's written down in 2 ways. If you look at the chart, the first chart you'll see is a quarter symbol up on the top. The bottom notes are pretty much the same as they were in the rock beat, but up on the symbol line you have a quarter note, then you have an eighth note with a dot after it. Now the dot adds half of what that note is worth to it. It was already a half a count, so now it's 3/4 of a count. And the last little note there with the bar across and the little flag attached to it is a 16th note. So it's a 1/4 of a count. So what you're counting here actually is 1, 2 E and a 3, 4 E and a 1, 2 E and a 3. It's not very swinging. So what you do in your mind is you edit it out to make it swing. It would normally sound like this. Can't swing to that, so you make it sound like this. Okay? The other way that it's written on the next chart is written out in triplets. And what you have is 3 notes divided over 1 count. And you play the first one and the last one. Easy to talk about, but hard to do. What you do is you say 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, and you play the first note and the last note of those 3. So you're going 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. So there are 2 ways of writing that down, but they both sound the same, okay? Swing sounds 1, 2, a 3, 4, a 1, 2, a 3, 4, a 1, 2, a 3, 4. Bass drum is the same, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Snare drum, hi-hat, both the same. Okay? Regardless of how it's written on the page, they both sound the same. Just a swing beat, using that beat that I just played for you and counted out, sounds like this, but I'm going to take the bass drum away and not play it on all 4 beats, and the snare drum, I'm not going to play on all 4 beats either. I'm just going to stick them in when I feel like playing an accent, and it sounds like this. So that's the kind of thing you come up with in swing. It isn't a pattern that's written out perfectly, except you try to keep the cymbal part the same. Okay? You try to keep that no matter what you do with your left hand or your foot, try to keep that the same. And your timekeeper over here, the hi-hat, goes on 2 and 4, solid, all the time. Never change. Just keep that hummer going over there. It keeps the horns hearing something that they can relate to. A really good book that you could practice playing out of would be Mel Bay's Stage Band Drummer's Guide by Pickering. It's a good book. If you go to page 66 to the end, there's some really good patterns to practice. Here's a nice, slow swinging example of a jazz swing type beat, okay? A 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's kind of another form of swing. It's called a shuffle, and it's just a little bit different than swing and jazz, because shuffle crosses over into country and it crosses over into rock, and it's jazz too, kind of. A shuffle beat is different from a swing beat on the cymbal part, in that instead of playing 1, 2 triplet, 3, 4 triplet, you play 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. In the shuffle, basically the bass drum and the snare drum and hi-hat sound the same. Now you can play any of these ride parts, any of these upper cymbal parts above the staff. You can play them either on the ride cymbal or on the hi-hat. And just to show you the difference, here it is on the ride cymbal: 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and here's a totally different sound playing exactly the same strokes on the hi-hat. 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 1, a 2. I changed nothing. I changed nothing except my right hand went to this cymbal over here. Now a shuffle is very similar to a swing beat. The only difference between the two is that on the swing, you play a single quarter note on 1, and then you play the triplet sound 2 on counts 2 and 4. So it sounds 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the shuffle is different in that the triplet sound or the swing sound is on all 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's an example of what I mean, and I'll do some changing and talking during this demonstration. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if you want the shuffle to really cook and you want to drive the band, it's going a little slow, seems a little dead or something, change your snare drum hand, change your left hand to play the same thing that your cymbal hand plays, like this. But be sure you still accent on 2 and 4 so you don't lose that afterbeat sound. But here's an original example of old blues music. You're going, instead of 1, 2, you're going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Blues is generally written in 12/8 because 12/8 is really easy to read. In other words, 12 beats to a measure, and an eighth note gets 1 count. So instead of counting 8 notes 1 and 2 and, you count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Here's what it sounds like all together. Bass drums a 2-beat, snare drums on 2 and 4, hi-hats on 2 and 4 like it was before. 1. 1 and 2 and. You can sometimes double the ands to make it sound different. 1 and 2 and 1, 2, and change the bass drum. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you look at the chart, it's all on there. 3, 4. That's what blues sounds like. My dog died, my wife left me, and I got the flu. And am I blue? Here's an example of a 12/8 blues tune. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Here's a 3/4 time song. 3/4 time is the time signature. The upper 3 tells you that there are 3 counts in a measure. 1, 2, 3, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's the basic difference. 4th count is just not there. You can't play whole notes because a whole note gets 4 counts. You just play 1, 2, 3. Waltz time is what it's referred to often. And in waltz time, in 3/4 time, usually the first beat, which is on the bass drum, 1, gets the heaviest, loudest beat, and the 2, 3 are light. So you're going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Hi-hat can do just about anything except play on the 1. You can play it on 2, 3. You can play it just on 2, whatever you want to do. A waltz sounds like this all together. The ride cymbal is going 1, 2, 3. Snare drum is on 2, 3. Hi-hat is either on 2 or 2, 3. Bass drum's on 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now that's fairly boring and quite easy. You can change the cymbal parts to make it more interesting. Say, for instance, in a jazz waltz. A jazz waltz, you could go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or ride cymbal. You notice I'm changing time quite a little here, but that just makes it more interesting. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Here's an example of how a waltz goes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Country music isn't exactly the music that I play all the time, but I do like it. Country music rhythms are the same as everybody else's rhythms. Just for an example, crossover country music like Kenny Rogers does uses swing, and it uses ballad type music, and it uses the same kind of beat as swing music. Country swing like Bob Wills, swing music, great kind of jazzy kind of music. The main difference, I think, there is in the general sound of the music, the way that people sing and the way they play the other instruments. Country rock, take Alabama for instance. Play rock music, use rock beats. So country music uses all kinds of beats. I don't want to short it. I'm going to give you a little example here with the band of how country music might sound. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to do a little Latin beat for you. It's a Latin beat that I made up, copying different kinds of Latin sounds that I heard. It's something that I can do on the trap set that kind of fills in everything because I don't have congas and bongos and all that kind of thing. It's a really simple beat. It looks kind of difficult. It's really not that hard. It's based on eighth notes. In other words, it goes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and basically. And I do that with my hands. I do some different kinds of things with my hands, however, on this one. Let me show you. First of all, there are about 4 sounds here. One of them is the rim of the drum. Another one is a rim shot sound. Another one is a different kind of rim shot sound. Then the tom-tom, tom-tom sound. It goes a little bit like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Okay? Here's a tune with that kind of sound used in it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just a few general things that I wanted to cover before I close here. I got this idea from Ed Shaughnessy from the Tonight Show band, Johnny Carson, right? He said, play your whole set the same volume. Don't get gorilla foot, for instance. Okay? Play your whole set the same volume. Try to get a full effect of the whole set, not one thing loud and another thing soft. Another thing is be part of the band that you play with. Don't try and be a soloist all the time. You want to be part of the band. You want to fit into the general sound. So don't play too loud all the time, okay? When you play a fill, a solo kind of a thing, here's a fill. Okay, that little pop is a fill kind of a thing. Be sure you keep that the same tempo as the rest of the music. I have a set of 5 drums, snare, 2 toms up there, a tom down here, and a bass drum. This is a really nice size set to start with. However, you don't need this many drums. You could play your whole life long without these 2 if you wanted to. I recommend a 4-piece set to start on. Snare, tom, floor tom, a ride cymbal, and a hi-hat. You can live without the crash. Later on, you might want to add more drums to your set, and if you do want to add more drums to your set, be sure that originally you buy a set that can be added to. A lot of times if you buy inexpensive drums that are imported or something like that, and you buy a funny color or a funny design, when you're ready to buy another drum, they won't be available. So be sure that you get something that's basic that you can add to. In other words, this color or black or something like that. Another thing that I wanted to mention is be a good drummer first. Just be a really good, steady drummer, one that all the players can rely on. Then after you're a good drummer and people like you, then you can add your flash. If you want to twirl your sticks or toss your head or jump up and down or stand on top of your drums, do that later. First, be a really good drummer. The other thing I want to say, and the last thing, is about rudiments. Rudiments, there are 26 rudiments, and they are the basic rules or the basic building blocks of drumming. I don't have a picture of them here, and I don't have time to talk about them, but just to give you one example. One rudiment is a drum roll. You learn how to do a roll like that with a rudiment. Another rudiment that works really well for set drumming is a paradiddle. A paradiddle goes right, left, right, and then left, right, left, left. And you start out very slowly like that and speed up, and what it does is build up the strength in your left hand or your right hand so that both hands are equal. Listen to the volume so both hands sound the same. Not, you know, that kind of thing. Try and be real even. Go one hand after the other. You can get a copy of a rudiment from a drum teacher, from a store, or possibly in the back of a lesson book. The reason I like the paradiddle is because you can practice getting even with your feet and your hands, with just your feet together or just your hands together. For instance, like this. Here's a bass drum and a left hand. Paradiddle, paradiddle, right, left, 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 left. Foot, hand, hand, hand. And speed that up. You know, it's just a real good practice thing. You can do it with your right hand on the hi-hat. Or you can do it with the feet. Or the hands like I did originally. Rudiments are a great thing. Get a copy of them and practice them. I hope this video will get you off to a good start in playing the drum set. Playing the drums is a lot of fun. You can make a lot of money doing it, and you can make a lot of new friends playing music together. I want to remind you one more time. Practice, play slowly, learn to do it right, and then go out and enjoy yourself and have a great time. 1, 2, 3, 4.